Hello and welcome to HorsePlayer Happy Hour. Producer Craig Cameo to start the show. There he is.
I didn't realize I was still here.
We're glad you are. We're glad you're there, pushing all the right buttons except that one. But I think he was feeling underappreciated. I don't think we've been giving him enough credit for the tireless work he does behind the scenes, and that was his way of telling us about it. We gotta do these intros real quick. I'm PTF. I'm in the Brooklyn bunker. I've got the hat to prove it. And this, from an undisclosed location in New England, is TV's Matt Bernier of the Matt Bernier Show, of NBC Sports, of lots of places. How are things, my friend?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Looking forward to this weekend. So excited. It's my second favorite weekend of the year outside of the Breeders' Cup. So I'm sure we can dive into it all over the next hour or so. But just really, really excited for this weekend.
I need to hustle some entries for this contest real quick. We're about to begin. Today, we're going with the first race at Belmont. So there's only 3 minutes, according to Belmont's post-time clock. If you want to get involved, go to horseplayers.com. At this point, you're probably a little late to do much handicapping. Play all the fours. Do something. Participate in this because all of the house cut goes to charity, goes to Thoroughbred Aftercare, specifically the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance and our friends at the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation. So take an extra entry, just put in a random one, and then for next week, make a note. You know, we'll all have more bandwidth next week when there's not a Triple Crown race on the line and a few pieces of news distracting us in the thoroughbred racing world. And so make a note on your calendar, and you can do all the homework and join us next week. We're going to tell you all about what this is and why you should play. But right now, just trust us and get involved. And maybe we could talk about this race for half a second, at least, Matt Bernier, before they end up going off. We've got a field of 9 going to post, 8 betting interests with a 9-5 favorite. Is this a race you had much opinion in?
No, and I mean, you and I talked about it before we came on. This is speed handicapping for us, just given the amount of other things going on getting ready for this weekend. But I think the 2 horses who are taking the money make plenty of sense, Dark Money as well as Steam Engine. Having said that, I think just strictly from a number standpoint, I would be more interested in the 4 Steam Engine, just simply because we're dealing probably with a little bit of class relief in a spot like this. I think the best races for this one have come on the main track. They tried the grass last time out. I'm not going to hold that against them. Running style-wise, unless you think this one, which I kind of believe is the controlling speed, just clear off to the front and say, come and catch me. I would much rather take 3-1 on the 4 than 9-5 on the 3.
I tend to agree, and that 9-5 just went into 8-5. You and I both very pace-oriented in what we do, and I could see a world in which Steam Engine, a horse I like a lot, isn't in the best form of his career at this point, but I feel like against this group, there is a non-zero chance he could control things. That's at a little bit of a bigger price as a horse to maybe come running in the number or maybe even win. I thought the 6 Financial Stability was at least worth talking about. Adding blinkers, getting the switch to Luis Saez, and going out for Rudy Rodriguez, who has an excellent record with new acquisitions. Definitely not the speediest sort, is going to probably need some help up front, but maybe adding the blinkers and with an aggressive rider in Saez can get an okay trip and come grinding on for at least a piece at a little bit of a price here.
Yeah, and I'll throw another one, and actually it's the horse right up on the screen if you're looking for a little bit of a price at 6-1, the 5 Runaway Loot, horse we haven't seen since the middle of March for Pat Reynolds. This barn, they very clearly picked their spots, and I think you want to take notice of that. Javier takes them out here. This horse is proven at Belmont Park, is not dependent on the lead, but will be forwardly placed. So if for whatever reason the horse that I've pointed out can't see out the distance or doesn't make the lead with Steam Engine, Dark Money, maybe 8-5 is a little bit on the short side. 2 more appetizing prices. And I think 2 horses that'll probably be played in the contest pretty heavily would be the 6 and the 5, the ones we just pointed out.
It makes sense. It feels like they are the contest type horses, and some people might be new to. We know a lot of people here are new to contests. We've been encouraging people to play and get involved, and I'll let you take a crack at answering this question first. When you talk about a horse that's more of a contest type horse, Matt, generally speaking, what does that mean to you?
Well, I think a combination of things. First and foremost, a horse that is certainly not an underlay. You're not going to be taking an underlay in a contest. Just from a probability standpoint, it doesn't really do you any good unless you think the horse just absolutely can't lose, and we know that's a fallacy. But especially too with a shorter contest, and well, I guess any contest in general, you want to be looking for some prices as well. Because if you pass up on an opportunity to take, let's say, the 5 horse who's going to pay $14, or the 6 horse who's going to pay somewhere close to $24 or $25, you're probably not going to be able to make that up at some point down the line. So those sort of horses who maybe know they're not the most likely winner or even the second most likely winner in many instances, their odds are larger. They're flat out, they're overlays. And I think you want to take advantage of horses who are not without a chance that offer an overlaid price in a contest. That's the way I go about it.
Well, as you were talking, it just reminded me to point this out because I don't think I have in a while. I will take, if I thought the 3 of the 4 were nailed on here, if I really didn't have an alternative, I'd take them. We only have a 6-race contest today. I'll explain the reasons for that shortly. But if I can get points that other people aren't going to get, I'll do that. But if you're torn, and I think this is almost always true in contests, if you're torn between a shorter price runner and a longer price runner, take the longer price runner. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, so actually it's an interesting piece that you bring up. And I remember, I may have brought this up at some point last year when we first started doing the HorsePlayers show. I was still, babe in the woods trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And Mike Baychok, the $1 Million Man, he was kind enough to, everybody that I dealt with offered up great advice, but Mike specifically with his way, and I don't know if he's changed his philosophy over the years, but he said in some sort of a pick and pray, or even just any kind of contest, for the first half, pick who you think is going to win, and then assess at that point what the price situation is, where you are on the leaderboard, what you do or don't need to do. Play more of the math game for that second half. But for that first half, if you really like a 15-1 shot, play him. If you really like a 2-1 shot, play him. Because we know, and Jonathan has brought this up time and time again, 10, 20 cents can be the difference between getting a seat or winning a contest and losing a contest. So I agree with you. If you really loved, the 2 or the 3, or excuse me, the 3 or the 4 in here, I wouldn't talk you off. I also wouldn't just flat out say I'm going to pick the horse I think is going to win if they are an underlay. At that point, I would shop around.
And the only exception to that idea of staying away from an underlay for me would be maybe in a live format, and we'll talk about live versus pick and pray in a minute for some of the newer players. But in a live contest where sometimes you might be in a spot where all you need is points. All you need is any points. And at that point, so it doesn't, the marginal value of getting a value horse versus a not value horse that doesn't exist. It's all about finding the most likely winner sometimes because of game theory in a specific spot. But though that's few and far between. Almost every other situation I could think of, your attitude is the right attitude as they turn in here at Belmont with Steam Engine holding a narrow lead. But Dark Money, well, for a second I was going to say he's traveling a little better, but then Steam Engine was digging in down on the inside. Looks like we're going to have a bit of a battle to the lead, though I think Dark Money might have just cracked him as I said that, and it's going to be the chalk exactor 3-4 to start things off at Belmont, and it looks like the 8, the lovely gray, is going to run up in there for third.
Now, a question for you. You're not too far from Belmont Park. Has the rain begun yet? What's the forecast?
Yeah, I should look at the forecast for out there because it's been like a little microclimate-y. It's not always like this, but it's been a little microclimate-y around here where I'm hearing people like 2 neighborhoods away and it's raining and it's not raining here.
Oh, wow.
So it's far enough away that I feel like I should check that. It does not look like it's raining at Belmont right now, which is good. It's looked threatening here all day. It rained overnight, but I haven't seen any rain today. So I don't know. Fingers crossed. I mean, I didn't look at they haven't made any changes yet, right?
No, and I just think it's something, the only reason I bring it up, it's something to monitor both today, tomorrow, overnight, leading into Saturday, because, we've seen so many times that weather can, for better or for worse, change tracks and obviously change where you want to be positioned from time to time, inside, outside, front, back, any of that kind of stuff. So trying to glean something from the way the track is playing today may not necessarily transfer if we end up with some heavy rainstorm at some point over the next 36 or 48 hours. But again, that's just me. speculating at that point. I have no idea what the weather. I had seen there was a chance of some thunderstorms, and I don't know if they're going to come to fruition or not.
It looks like around 6 o'clock, some thunderstorms are going to be in the area. The 6 o'clock hour is 50%. 7 o'clock, it goes up to 90%. 8 p.m., it's 98%. Okay. So hopefully,
get some rain then.
Yeah, definitely going to rain tonight. Hopefully we can get this card off unscathed because there's certainly some interesting stuff later on. So how about this? I don't know if I was meant to. I would have had the opportunity to go to Belmont to wrap the show here. My original plan was wrap the show here and head out and catch those stakes later in the card. But somebody in my party didn't know it was a late post and made a 6:30 p.m. dinner reservation. So we'll be watching on our phones.
Do we know that someone, or do we not want to blow up their spot?
Pat Cummings said he has thick skin. And he is, in truth, the man is a saint. I mean, trying to corral this party of ne'er-do-wells as he does, it's a thankless job, and he's very, very good at it. And you know what? It's probably for the best because we've got, if we'd done the whole card and then gone out, it was going to be another ridiculously late night. Last night was a late night, as we have it very nicely pointed out by Howard, who's watching. I was up at 5 a.m. today, so the idea of getting like an earlier dinner and being able to get back is probably going to end up being a good thing. Plus, I'm recording another podcast, one of the most popular shows we do. We've never done it for the Belmont before. We've done it typically for the Derby and Breeders' Cup, but the Pro Player Roundtable, I've got, I actually should confirm one more time because plans can change, but sounds like Paul Matisse and Sean Borman are going to be staying up late. I'm going to get back from dinner. We're going to record them. And at least this way, I don't have to make them, stay up past midnight. So it's all for the best.
You and I almost crossed over last night. You got up at 5. I think I went to bed at 2:30 because I had to watch the end of the Golden Knights and Avalanche game that went to overtime. And then I'm buttoning up. I think it's one of those things too, and I'm sure you know this as well as anyone. You try to do the races, or you go over the races that need to be done by a certain point. So, I've had the Belmont done for, we've all had the Belmont done for probably a week and a half now.
Yeah.
But then you go into the Manhattan, then you go into the Met, and you go into all these other races. And now I'm kind of working my way backwards. So last night, bleary-eyed, I'm looking through the Woody Stevens going, all right, well, who can I find somebody to beat Jackie's Warrior? What? And then you get to a point and you go, paralysis of analysis. It's all mishmash. It's gray matter. I don't know what's going on. I got to go to bed. And that was that. So, but you and I, we only had about a 2.5 hour overlay there.
That's pretty funny. Well, we got to talk about some of these Belmont races, and that's one thing I wanted to encourage people to do. Drop questions in the comments wherever you're watching. We'll pop some of them up on screen. We can give shout outs if you just want to let us know. We love communicating with you. So if you just want to let us know where in the world you're watching, we've had some far-flung visitors during these HorsePlayer Happy Hour shows. We're going to get to your Belmont questions very, very soon. The order of business before that, though, for those that don't know, is to explain what the heck HorsePlayer Happy Hour is. So we started this last year. It was a pandemic project that started off as an excuse to hang out and have a few beers and watch some races and interact with some folks that our friends at the Breeders' Cup cooked up, basically. And we were like, that sounds fun. And then we added this contest element to it. At the first level, these contests are feeders for Breeders' Cup qualifying events. You put up your $20, and then you win your way into Saturday's qualifier, where you have a chance to win your $10,000 Breeders' Cup betting challenge seat. But then this year in the off season, we put our heads together and came up with a fun wrinkle about creating a year-long interconnected series of contests. And Matt, I'll let you explain how that bit works.
Yeah, we're just looking at it saying, how can we tie everything together as opposed to having each week be sort of a one-off? So we kind of devised the idea of a regular season and then a postseason. The regular season, the overall leader as far as the points are concerned, and points are allotted to the top 10 finishers week in and week out. Whoever ends up with the most regular season points, they win a $10,000 BCBC seat. If you finish in the top 2 each week, you qualify for the postseason. You get into the playoffs, and that'll be a 3 or 4 week stretch that we will be dwindling down the field. And at the end of the day, whoever wins the postseason at the final table will also get a BCBC seat. So it gives that incentive to play week in and week out to try to accumulate points and sort of improve your position on the leaderboard, and also gives you the opportunity to continue to try to qualify for the playoffs. And it's just, again, we tried to figure out as tight and concise a way as possible to entice people to play every week, as opposed to just saying, I'll do it this week, I got nothing going on, or, I'll pick it up again some point down the road. I think this is so far so good, and we've had a pretty good response. So knock on wood, we continue on this way as we go throughout the summer.
I think we will. I think we have a chance to pick up steam because nobody's out of this. You can count up to 8 scores for the tour, but from what we've seen so far, it wouldn't surprise me if nobody gets to 8 scores. I think you could possibly come in, have a hot 4 weeks at the end, and be drawing live to win on this tour. And you mentioned about the little things we did to try to get people to play every week. A very affordable price point. So even if you haven't done the 100% job, you can fake it for $20, especially knowing that money is going to charity. And then, as you said, the playoffs, the idea of qualifying for them, where you get a $10,000 added prize, and the idea of chasing the overall tour. We like to think we've come up with a system that offers something for everybody. And it's honestly the best deal in contests. Where else do you get a low buy-in, no extra money to join the tour, and $20,000 added that we, the players, aren't paying for? That's us at In the Money Media and our friends at Breeders' Cup are making this happen because we want to do something cool and support horse players and support our equine charities.
And I glossed over that the top 10% each week of these happy hours then move on to the Saturday BCBC qualifiers. So, there are multiple things that you're playing for. And to your point, we wanted to make sure that it was still at a low enough price point that not only did it entice the seasoned veterans who play contests day in and day out, but it also hopefully afforded the newbie or the person who was a little bit on the smaller side as far as budget goes, an opportunity to get involved and be able to try to kind of cut their teeth against some of the best contest players in the world.
Very well put. Let's take a quick look, Producer Craig, if you're in tune with me at the moment, at our leaderboard. It was kind of fun, the name that popped up on top. We have a speak of the devil, he shall appear situation here, Matt Bernier, with Michael Bachek as part of that scrum who picked the winner of the first race as the very first name there. Scroll down a little there, Craig. Let's see how many people had that 650. There it is. So, yeah, we have a 17-way tie for first right now with Trish Smith, who we've seen be very active in these games. Togo Travaglia, lots of very familiar names from the contest world. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Feel free to ask your questions as we see the tie there for basically a ginormous way tie for second with a bunch of names of familiar people, including Howard Kravitz, whose name we popped up there before. Rick Hammerly, the Hammer, great to see him. And then a couple of names of people who've been very active and great in the chat as well, including Chris Couples and John Gasper. So shout out to all of y'all, and thank you for playing, and throw us in some stuff in the comments, and we'll get to talking about them. Here's the question that maybe most people have on their minds for this edition of HorsePlayer Happy Hour. Let's cut right to the chase, Matt Bernier, before we move on to this race at Gulfstream Park. Who are our 3 horses for the Belmont Stakes? First, second, and third. I'll let you kick it off.
Right in order. On top, I have the number 6, Known Agenda. In second, I have the 2, Essential Quality. And in third, I have the 7, Rock Your World.
Very interesting. Let's talk it through for a minute. Essential Quality has gotten so much love. That's interesting to me that you're going with Known Agenda on top. I have those first 2 numbers in reverse order. Is that a question to you of thinking, is it a pure value play, or do you think Known Agenda is as likely a winner as Essential Quality?
A bit of a combination of the two. I believe Essential Quality is the most likely winner. However, I don't know that I think he has such a substantial advantage on the rest of the field. And when I say the rest of the field, I think there's a pretty hard line in the sand between the 5 who I view as contenders and the 3 who, to me, by my estimation, are maybe underneath types. Maybe they can run third or fourth. The other 2 Pletchers and the Japanese horse, Francisco de Ina. Essential Quality, I think he makes all the sense in the world. I think he could very easily win this race. I don't know that I think he deserves to be 7 or 8 to 5, which I think he could be by post time. Although I wouldn't argue with someone who said, you know what, based on the way he ran in the Derby, he's never run a bad race in his life. with a little bit more racing luck, he's going to be able to get the job done and do it comfortably. I'm not going to argue with anyone who takes that stance. I just think for me, from a value standpoint, he's a little on the light side. Meanwhile, Known Agenda, many people have brought up all the obvious reasons, the Pletcher angle. He knows how to win the Belmont as well as anyone. Irad Ortiz, obviously, those guys have teamed up a number of times, but they've won this race by themselves on different occasions as well. So I think, to me, Known Agenda is the kind of horse who it feels like this distance is really going to work to his advantage. The key to the race for me for Known Agenda is Irad having the horse in position at the half mile. And when I say that, the half mile, not the half mile pole into it, I mean a half mile to go in the run. Because if you're not within, I'm saying 2 lengths. If you want to go over the past 10 years, you can go out to 3 lengths with Creator. But you need to be within 2 lengths, I think, of the front to have any real chance of winning this race. So it'll be critical for Irad to have the horse in that position with a half mile left to run. I think he will be.
Let's talk about Rock Your World. Now, I love this horse in the Derby. I thought the wire trip was something that he was potentially going to get there. I'm a little bit scared of him in here. And what I mean by that is I'm scared that he's not going to get that trip. I have in my head that Hot Rod Charlie's going to be ridden more aggressively. I also had in my head that the Japanese raider, Francisco de Inna, was going to be ridden more aggressively, though speaking with Klaus Ebner over on the Players podcast, he thought he was going to be more settled and maybe not an on the lead type. I want to hear what your vision for Rock Your World's trip is, and if you're concerned at all about him having company on the front end.
Yeah, so, initially when I first saw the PPs, I said, oh, Rock Your World, he's the controlling speed. He goes right to the front and, come and catch me. But then to your point, you start really thinking about it a little bit more from a tactical standpoint. And I agree with you. I think Hot Rod Charlie's probably going to be ridden a little bit more aggressively than maybe it seems at face value. Maybe you get something more along the lines of that Louisiana Derby 2 starts back where they try to go. And as far as Francisco de Inna is concerned, I think he's a horse who, I talked about this leading into the Preakness. He's not nearly as slow as the UAE Derby would suggest. He had a terrible start. He was taken out of his element. In his first few starts over in Japan, he was a very handy horse. He was able to be into the run early on. I just thought with the Preakness, he was very keen early, and they were going a pretty good clip. Even if he's not going to be hustled out of there, I can't help but think he's going to be forward. I'd be surprised if he was coming from a few lengths off of it. So with those two going, Rock Your World, maybe he will have a little bit of company up front. I'm still of the opinion that he is not an absolute need the lead type. He won from just off of it. That Pasadena Stakes 3 starts back, going a mile on grass. And my thought is, if you liked him at 9-2 in the Kentucky Derby, why wouldn't you like him at 3.5 to 1 or 4 to 1 in the Belmont at a distance? Which, to be fair, I've heard many people bring up the sort of concern about his ability to see it out. Maybe I'm way off. I think he's one of the rare horses that actually wants it, especially with that running style. I think a mile and a half is going to be fine for this horse. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not really dissuaded by him. I could see a scenario in which he wins, and I almost want to sort of back up what I said leading into the Derby. If anybody was going to win for fun, I think it might be this horse.
You're making a ton of good points about his ability to sit, potentially about distance. I mean, that was some gallop out that day after the Santa Anita Derby, and he shapes like a horse. And to me, on breeding, the distance should be no question. I'm not sure I understand the non-staying case for him at all. I guess one thing another pro Rock Your World idea is that the form of that race, obviously, and the California horses in general have looked good. It's tough, but there's another part of me that thinks he might have been a little bit like track bias aided to look as good as he did that day, and we'll see. I'm probably going to oppose, and now I'm feeling a little wishy-washy about it, but we'll come back and talk about it. Here's a point from Gary asking if the fast workout the other day from Rock Your World adds to the appeal. Is that something that you also feel like he has in his corner? Did you have a chance to see that work?
I didn't see the most recent one, but I mean, by all indications, this is a very, very brilliant sort of morning horse, and what you've seen from him in the afternoons, I guess I'm of the opinion, and maybe I need to do this universally with all horses. If you liked what you saw in that one race, I just don't know why all of a sudden you wouldn't like him in a spot like this until simply because he didn't have a chance to do any running in the Derby. And unless you think, being bounced around as badly as he was, or the flights back and forth are going to take a little bit out of him. But I don't want to just project that and say, oh, I don't think he's going to replicate the same run. I don't know. To your point, I thought the California form held up very well, not just because of Medina Spirit, but we saw Dream Shake run as well as he did in the Pat Day Mile. I just, Rock Your World, I think he's one of the three. I had 3 horses that I made 4-1. Known Agenda, Essential Quality, and Rock Your World. So those are the 3 that I will use as A's in any kind of multi-race sequence.
You're making a ton of good points. It's for me, as somebody who has gotten off Rock Your World, I'll just say for me, it just has to do with the trip. I thought he was, ironically, going to get an absolutely great trip in the Derby, and I'm just having trouble. When I run this race in my mind, I'm seeing a lot of scenarios where he has more company than he wants, but it'll the final decision yet to be made for me.
The only other thing I would throw out, and I'd be curious what your thoughts are. I mean, is it possible in a similar-ish fashion to the Santa Anita Derby, but I guess maybe not. Maybe it's apples to oranges. But I could see a scenario in which Joel is aggressive out of the gate, almost, I don't want to say to a fault, but it almost turns the inside horses off enough where you say it's a 1.5 miles. I don't want to get into any kind of a prolonged duel. If he uses enough, let's say they go a little bit quick for the opening quarter, but then he can back that thing down to 48 and change, almost 49 for the half. Say you go 23-4 for the opening quarter. I just wonder if this is a horse, if you believe that he has the stamina, can you use enough to turn everyone else off, clear, drop anchor, and then save something and try to kick away as they enter the far turn? Again, these are all the reasons that the Belmont's my favorite race, because I think there are so many more tactics involved than we see in just any other race.
It's a fascinating handicapping puzzle. Let's talk about race number 6 at Gulfstream real quick, Matt, our second contest race. I was going to make you a little case for number 8, Italian Twin. I don't think 4-1 is bad on this runner, who I would imagine, looking at pace figures in here, could get a good forward sit and might have enough finish to go past them. Don't mind having Mike Maker and Jaramillo on my team. Real quick, as they're loading, what did you think?
The 4, Sunshine City, I think is a little bit interesting in a spot like this. Just strictly from the way that the horse runs, I don't think is absolutely dependent on the lead, as was evidenced way back in the career debut. I know that was on dirt, but this is a horse who has passed runners in the past. I don't think you have to have the front if we're unable to procure it. And from a price standpoint, I don't think the horse is totally out of the question. So 5-1, I think, is fair on the 4.
Yeah, I feel like those are reasonable alternatives to the favorite. I didn't really have anything in particular against the favored runner here. Number 3, Kate's Kingdom. Just felt like the price was kind of short enough.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, another one of those where I wouldn't sit there and say to anyone, if you like the horse, don't bet him. But she, to me, in a weird way, is kind of plateaued. I mean, you look at the 3 most recent runs from a buyer standpoint, 71, 71, 72. I don't know that you're going to get a giant forward move in a race like this. And if you think 71's good enough, then take your 2-1 and hopefully it works out.
All right, let's see what happens here as they break away from the gate down at Gulfstream with a long shot, the Uncaptured Lady making the front. And is that Sunshine City sitting just off her?
Yeah, I mean, I would call this the perfect trip. I don't know. We'll find out if she's good enough or not. But if you let the 25-1 shot go out there and set the pace, you effectively pretend they're not in the run, and you try to inherit this as you round the far turn, and you hope that you can outstay everyone.
8 looks to be in a good spot, going a little bit wide, but that should be okay. 3, the favorite, I thought was in a bit of a weird spot early, but has now settled down. 23-2, that's probably quick enough for these. But it's, who knows? It is also the Durf at Gulfstream, so yeah. Our 4 and our 8 are probably in okay places. And now the 3s maybe is about to lose a spot and might need a little racing luck. I'm feeling pretty good. If you were alive to the 4 and the 8, I'd be feeling pretty good. Though the 2 making a run here, circling. We'll see if that one can find anything in the lane.
I was a little curious. I mean, unless the rider of the 4 was saving, I would have thought you would have tried to get some separation there. Maybe it won't matter. Horse is flailing on the left lead. Finally changed. The 5 is rolling down the center of the track.
Yeah, let's see if you can find any more. No, I think everybody's just going to be beat for speed by Smart Spending, who showed an impressive turn of foot to win rather cozily in the end at a decent price. Look back at this one real quick and see if I always like to do that one on one that we didn't really talk about, who wins at that kind of appealing contest type of a price. One thing that leaps off is, I think, just looking at like closing sectionals late pace, you could have made a case that Smart Spending was going to be the best closer, maybe was helped by that stronger than expected pace in there and made good use of that late kick.
And fully acknowledging, I didn't watch tape or anything. The last 2 running lines, it looks like you have some, perhaps things that you would want to go back and take a look at just to see how bad the start was in that most recent run. And then 2 back, lacked room upper. I'm always curious what that actually means. Are you just in a little bit tight, or did you have nowhere to go where you pinched between and you couldn't really kick on at the end? So good on you. If you had the horse, you're going to get a very nice mutual, I think about $16. And that should be one that'll spice the contest up some.
I've committed a party foul here. I guess, fan of horse, I guess I tipped your horse and we ended up not running very well. I apologize for that, but thank you for chiming in. Hopefully, I was going to say, hopefully we'll get on the same page again, but maybe for your sake, I should say, hopefully I'll pick a different horse than you the next time. Right? Let me know who you're picking in this race at Belmont, and I'll stay off them for you. Connie gives out a little Exacta, Rock Your World, and Hot Rod Charlie in the Belmont. We talked about Gary's comment. It's hard when you just see those raw times and you don't have a clocker report or haven't seen it. I mean, that's probably a very good sign, but and we've seen statistically that the fast 5 furlong work adds a lot of signal to a lot of numbers. So it's probably a good thing, but it's not the kind of thing that's going to make me change my mind about a horse if I didn't see the workout. You know what I mean?
No, and one of the things, kind of going back to workouts, one of the things that I was intrigued by with Known Agenda was his most recent work was head and head with Dr. Post. And frankly, in my opinion, he outworked Dr. Post. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of Dr. Post. I think he's a fine horse. But really, when you push comes to shove, he has run fast races, and he's a good older horse who's not without a chance in the Met on Saturday. So I look at that as all the more reason to be interested in a horse like Known Agenda. And Todd Pletcher is someone who, I don't want to say he's usually on the more reserved side as far as talking about his runners. And, he's always confident with them, but I don't think he's ever, let's say, boisterous about his feeling. I couldn't help but notice. I mean, he seems to think that this horse is ready to run the best race of his life on Saturday. And just based on the comments that I was reading, it at least was a little bit of okay, I take notice of that piece, that Todd is very confident going into this spot as opposed to just sort of staying in the more reserved manner. So, but to going back to the initial piece with Rock Your World, I mean, put it this way, I'd rather see fast than slow at this point.
Yeah, I love Pletcher. It's not meant as a knock at all, but you're right. No. He can be the master of trainer speak, and that's his job, and I totally respect that. It's not, there's other trainers that got up all their horses. He's not one of those. So I agree. I would, more than most, him being optimistic would make me my antenna perk up just a little bit. Sometimes those soft handicapping factors have to be brought in as well. Some other comments here. John appreciated our shout out. Love it. We hope you continue to enjoy and play well in the contest. We have a little updated weather report from Howard of the Triple H Racing Podcast saying, like we said before, rain around dinner, scattered tomorrow till noon, then clearing out. So, I mean, I think I'd sign off on that. I don't want to lose. There's some exciting turf stuff tomorrow that hopefully will stay. Obviously the stakes, it would be a real shame if we lost, but even some of those other races, hopefully it'll all behave for us, and we'll see what we can do as far as that goes. This is a great question from Horse Tickets about the 2-day pick 4. Assuming you've looked at those races, Matt, maybe after this race we'll have a break and we'll tell you what's in those, and we can give our quick thoughts on them. But for now, I think we should talk about this race coming up at Belmont. We had Howard chimed in with Gale Horse Wind as a thought here, 9-2 on the tote board. Did you have a quick thought about this upcoming race at Belmont?
The 8 was the one that first came to mind, quick conversation, but then you take a look at the tote, and 9-5 isn't doing anything for me. I did like the fact that you saw a pretty substantial turn of foot, especially if you're someone who looks at the incremental fractions in a product like DRF's formulator. That third eighth, or I guess it wouldn't be the third eighth, it would have been the fifth eighth, was in 10 flat, according to the incremental splits. I don't know that I've ever seen something approaching 9 and change for an eighth of a mile. So maybe that's a typo. I don't know. But the point being, the filly finished with a big kick, and I can understand why she's taking the money that she is. I was between the 7 and the 8. The Ward horse, knowing that she was going to show speed, but I guess if I needed to make a pick, it would be the 8 horse.
Yeah, I was going to try to lock it up 7-8. It not anything exciting or particularly useful for contest players. 6 at Belmont, it's not the overwhelming speed always wins that a lot of turf sprints are. It plays a bit more testing, but I'm just not going to stand in front of the West Ward train at this point. They've all been firing. It seems like he's changed his 2-year-old program where he's bringing out the better ones for more money here a little bit later at Belmont. I'm not sure that that's what's happening, but it kind of feels that way. And while they're all running above par, I'm not standing in the way of 6 feet apart. And yeah, quick conversation. You made the case. I'll have to take another look. I did have a note about off poorly on Gale Horse Wind, and some other folks are, I think, seeing it Howard's way, because this one, who did finish up nicely on debut, best closing sectionals on offer, is catching some cash, 4-1 right now on the tote, bet below that modern line. Do you give that Linda Rice runner any count here?
Yeah, certainly. I suppose there's a scenario where you get that big improvement second out, and especially if there was some trouble out at the gate first time out of the box. I guess I'm looking at the tote more, and I'm looking at the PPs. Are we kind of overthinking this? And the Chad import down on the inside is 7-1. Typically I would say that that's not a great thing, but if a rad is there, I don't know. We've seen this story how many times in the past? And if you're going to get $16, I think we could very easily be sitting here after the race saying, how silly was this?
You're absolutely right. This is one that I would probably be inclined to say, running over 7 and farther over there, coming back at 6. I was tempted to just write it off as, okay, 270 days off, needs the race. But if you see me face palming after the race is over, you'll probably know that Isle of Wight got the money. I'm just going to lay into the chalk. I'll do a little super chalk double, 7-8 here. I feel like in the next leg at Belmont that following C is loose, and I'm just going to keep it simple and get a little bit of action, build up some money to buy a bar tab, buy a Negroni for Pat Cummings as an apology for making fun of him earlier in the show. That might be that's going to be the order of the day. And if it doesn't work out, it'll just be a very expensive round of drinks, which is, I'm no stranger to as well. Okay, so the 6 race thing, I did have some people question why this. So no Pimlico today, and so we didn't have a third track, and Belmont week craziness, like there was just no way we were going to be able to devote more than 90 minutes. So I thought it was much better to have the show and have it be like not the ideal contest, because there's some strategy into a short field contest. It's just 1 week, it's just $20. You're not going to see a 6 race lineup with short fields in our playoffs, but this isn't that. So hopefully folks, it seems like plenty of people signed up to play, so I don't think people are too disappointed, but I did want to acknowledge people who were like, were you paying attention to what you did there? Yeah, I get it, special circumstances.
Well, hey, and compared to last week as well, we were initially talking about going on, and then we realized that, with the holiday on Monday, so many things were changed as far as the schedule was concerned. Otherwise, who knows? This week may have been one that we ended up taking a breather, but you gotta be able to adapt on the fly. So here we are, 6 races. And to your point, from a strategy standpoint, I think there's a lot more that goes into a 6 race contest than a 12 or 14 race contest.
Deciding where to take those points. Yeah, the only thing I don't like about it is it could end up more or less. You raise the possibility of it becoming a 1 race contest if somebody can,
for sure,
just find that bomb. But it's for a week here, it's it's not like the world was complaining. And we got, what did we get? 100 and how many did we? Do you have it in front of you? How many we got?
170.
Yeah, we'll take
Maybe
it.
A couple more.
All right, this Ward thing is still traveling pretty well as they turn in at Belmont. There are some horses closing. It's asked the question time, and it looks like the answer is going to be no. But let's see. The Ward runner, 6 feet apart, is fighting on gamely. Oh my gosh! Actually, now heading, but the real closers are coming. And look who it is, Mr. Facepalm. Mr. Facepalm himself.
What are we doing? Sometimes we can go through and we want to have these opinions, and sometimes it is as simple as it's Chad, it's Irad, it's turf, it's New York. What are we doing? Why not? What are we doing?
I think the pace. Now, I didn't look at the sectionals, but I'm guessing it was fast, and it probably. I swear that's a benefit to horses coming off of layoffs or maybe a little short of fitness when they can do their running late. You know what I mean? Like,
sure,
bring stamina into play. It's not like a horse coming off a break that might not be fully fit is not going to necessarily be capable of like out sprinting. But when they have an opportunity to, get into a rhythm and then run 3/8 or less than 3/8 to a quarter of a mile and get the job done. But I'm making, I don't want to make too many excuses. We talked about it, and it reminds me of a great Matt Vagvolgi line. We have Matt on to talk about the early pick 5 on Belmont Day through our Plus service. If folks want to learn more about that and getting more content from us, you can check it out inthemoneypodcast.com/plus. But one of the lines that he has when he's putting together tickets and before he makes his bet or makes his final decision in the contest, he says, have a funeral. In other words, like think of what's going to go wrong. And sometimes you can put a little cap in that scenario and maybe be smarter than I was there, where I could have I probably could have at least included this runner to get my money back. And but anyway, it's just funny. Oh, but I didn't officially do it, so I have to officially. Oh, there we go.
Also, from a contest standpoint, this is the difficulty or one of the difficult aspects of a pick and pray, where your pick is already in. You can't read the tote or do anything like that. Honestly, the only reason I even brought the horse up was because it kind of stuck out like a sore thumb that Chad and Irad with a Brent horse from Europe, 7-1. We don't see that very often, and I'm sure typically you would probably interpret that as negative sign that, maybe the horse is just chilling on the board. Maybe they're acknowledging they need to get a run in. But, that's one where I think if the price hadn't been standing out so outrageously, probably wouldn't even acknowledge that the horse was down there and said, okay, yeah, at 3-1, sure, makes sense. No surprise. Well, that's why this whole horse racing thing is as fun as it is.
It's really it brings up an interesting point about the trickiness, the art really of tote board reading. I mean, this might sound completely crazy, but I swear it's true. There'll be horses that are like a little cold on the board, like a tick beyond what you think they should be. And I think sometimes that's more important signal to pay attention to than a horse like this that's like 3 ticks over. Because like at some point, just on the math, they become an overlay. You know what I mean?
I'll give you an example. For me, we were doing an NBC show a number of years ago. It was either the Whitney or the Woodward, and I had picked Lee. And Lee opened. I can't remember even who else was in the field, but Lee should have been probably in that 3-1 range, and he opened up around 5, and he ended up going off around 9-2 or 5-1. And I don't remember who I was talking to. I said, boy, it seems a little bit odd. And I think to your point, it wasn't like the horse was 10-1. Horse was just a little bit like, what am I missing here? And sure enough, it didn't, basically a non-effort. So I agree with you. I think sometimes there is so much nuance in trying to discern what is important, what is signal versus what is noise. With reading where the money is and things like that. I do think it also is important, especially, and we're getting closer and closer to that time of year, and as well as anyone up at Saratoga, keep an eye on those first-time starters, because especially from barns that don't typically have them cranked up and ready to roll first out of the box, if all of a sudden, I'm not even going to name names, but somebody opens up at 3-1 into the teeth of a firster for Todd or a firster for Chad or someone else, that's legitimate early money, and it's something to take note of.
Yeah, that's some of my favorite betting action, actually. We've got that third race in, and we see Joe Solito now in sole possession of first place. Michelle Mcsweeney, there's a name I haven't seen in a minute. Somebody who's worked on the backside. I can't remember, was an assistant trainer and qualified for the NHC a few years ago. Fantastic to see that name on the leaderboard. Togo Travaglia we talked about before, hanging in there tough. You can see the names as we scroll down. The way it works is the top 10%, so the top 17 are going to be advancing into the Saturday qualifier. Of course, you can buy in for that directly. Go to horseplayers.com and look for the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge qualifier on Saturday and get involved that way. And then the other important numbers here, the top two, the exacta, they'll punch their tickets immediately for our finals at the end of the season. And then the top 10 will all get tour points. And maybe at some point, Craig, text me if it's not intuitive where it is, but I wouldn't hate the idea of taking a look at the overall tour leaderboard if that pops up at some point. Don't text me if you can't find it, and I'll try to find it during a race or something. But we had that great question, Matt, about the 2-day pick 4. Oh, here it is. Let's do this. Let's do this first. Look at David Browning. That's an impressive lead up there for the overall tour lead with 220. Bruce Meyer, 180. Dylan Donnelly, 150. Dylan coming to New York. I'm going to get a chance. I haven't seen him in person in a long time, but
nice.
had one of the most impressive. I'm going to just go ahead and say it. The most impressive tour run of somebody who didn't win. Apologies to Paul Sherman, Tommy Massis, Benny Soundstreet, etc. But cool to see his name on there. John Maslin, Gregory Lewis, John Kilpatrick, PJ Prescanis, Stephen Walsh, Truls Engebretson, and Daniel Mustari. Oh, we've got a tie there, so we'll also read Michael Domable's name, who's going to be doing some writing for us over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com as well. So you can see there, that's the tour leaderboard. The overall winner, currently that position held by David Browning. If it were to be over today, he'd win a $10,000 Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge seat. Pretty cool stuff. You want to talk quickly about this 2-day pick 4? Are you studied up at all on Friday?
I've just kind of done the cursory glance. I can't give you a great deal of info on the 2-mile race. I don't have much as far as intel on that other than just looking at the PPs. You certainly would know much more about that race than I would. I can certainly talk about the New York, though, just because that, I have to be honest, I did a live stream for the Shoemaker Mile along with the folks over at ABR on Monday. And I couldn't help but, and I said it after the race was over, Maxim Rate was the winner. She won the Grade 1 Gamely, which was the last race we went over. And I said, I can't help but think some of the folks who are entered in the New York on Friday at Belmont, boy, you look at that and say, it's a Grade 1. The purse, yes, it's a fraction of it. I believe the Gamely was only $300,000 compared to $750,000. But for a Grade 1, and you see who you had to run against out there compared to this race, which to me is borderline a Grade 1. I have to wonder if some of the connections are a little bit disappointed that they didn't take advantage of going out west.
It's a reasonable hypothesis because this race came up salty. The 2-day pick 4 starts in this New York, and it's a race where maybe David Aragona, the New York morning line maker, doesn't make bad morning lines, but if these morning lines are right, I'm all about Civil Union in this spot. I felt like last time out, that race had prep written all over it to me. Seemed too sharp, off the layoff, had what I considered a very difficult journey throughout, and now back, going farther in just 27 days, fits off her best numbers. I think Civil Union is extremely interesting at a price. Not one I'd be standing alone with. A couple of the others I would need. Thundering Knights for the Joseph O'Brien barn. He's made a lot of right decisions when it comes to picking which horses are going to come here and which ones are going to do well. I don't think it's a coincidence that the one he has here and the one we'll talk about in a minute in the Belmont Gold Cup both have form going left-handed. I think it's important, and it's something that Thundering Knights has. A potentially very interesting one at a price. And I need Harvey's Little Goyle as well. in this spot because I think she has a chance to get the best trip. She's shown that ability to sit handy and finish, and one that I have to keep somewhere on side also is Mean Mary. There is other pace. She might prove to be the best of it, and again, that's kind of a juicy. If that morning line is anywhere near right, 4-1, 9-2 on the horse, who I think is going to be the best speed in the right hands to take a big step up here in the second start off the break. Mean Mary, very interesting. So I haven't exactly figured out for the 2-day pick 4 how I'm going to grade this in terms of A's and B's or presses, but that's my biggest spread would be. I say my biggest spread. Those are 4 numbers. There's 4 more I could use as well, but in the interest of time and cutting things down, those are the 4 I know I'm going to use. What did you think in terms of your wagering opinion here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm as big a fan of Mean Mary as you'll find. I just think she's tough as nails. And, I love that she has that sort of speed that I think plays in these long distance turf races more often than not, because she does have a little bit of finish. I'll be very curious to see coming out of, do you really get anything fitness wise? I'm not a trainer. I'm not a horse person. Do you get anything out of that Gallarette? Because they went so slow. Maybe you get a little fitness because they did sprint at the end of it, but you're never going to see a race run that slowly ever again, I don't think, especially at 1 mile and 16th. I'd be curious to see where she'll be positioned. I assume it's on or pretty darn close to the lead. The one horse that I keep coming back to, and I'd have to go back and watch the tape because I haven't seen the Sheep's Head Bay. I remember when Magic Attitude came over here and she won the Belmont Oaks last year. I just thought it was an exceptional performance. I just thought the turn of foot was out of control big, and I thought she was going to go on to do bigger and better things. The QE2 Cup, it wasn't a bad race, but it wasn't what I had thought. I thought she was really going to just go in there and put the boots to the field. I wonder if a lot of that had to do with the way the race was run, given the pace dynamics and the way everything kind of played out there. Then she came back in that Hillsborough and, again, showed a big late kick. But off the bench, maybe she needed one. And again, I haven't watched the tape of the Sheep's Head Bay, but it looks like she did the exact same thing there. She's the kind of horse that I'd be really interested in, and I'll be curious to see. Feels like this is the first time. Well, I shouldn't say that with Micheline in there and some of those other races. She does take money, but if you got 6-1 on the morning line that she's been assigned, I think that's an interesting way to go in a race like this for Magic Attitude.
Yeah, it's an interesting call. You're right. She showed a lot of promise on that first run. And again, it's a race that is, you could go so many different ways. I wouldn't blame somebody for wanting to be more creative still than the lot that we talked about in the New York. Then the second leg of this pick 4 is the Belmont Gold Cup. We're going 2 miles. The Europeans have had an unbelievable record in this race, and I'm okay pressing up number 8, Baron Samedi. This horse, I mentioned the form, left-handed, second run of the year. This feels like a horse who, since getting gelded, has just been improving all the time. And it comes here with 6 wins in a row. Not a stone cold single for me, but a heavy press in number 8. I'll mention a horse, Zayad, who I've bet a couple of times in a row, and I feel like has just moved too early in both the Red Smith and the Man of War. Has form at marathon distances that's pretty darn good, and I feel like the 2 miles should suit, and maybe with a little bit more of a measured run through can find a way to get a piece of this or even possibly win. And then another one I definitely want somewhere in the Gold Cup and in this second leg of the 2-day pick 4, Fantasioso from Argentina. I thought was kind of interesting. Coming out of a trip that I didn't think was the greatest at Churchill Downs, having multiple grade 1 placings in Argentina, having fast closing sectionals, a horse that could be double digits, and I think goes there with a shot. You hinted that you hadn't done the deep dive on this one yet, Matt, but does anything, as I chat about it or as you glance at the PPs, does anything stand out to you?
Well, without knowing the running style of O'Brien's horse coming over, but I would imagine it's going to be a horse that comes from off of it. It doesn't look like there's a great deal of early speed. And it makes me wonder, Tide of the Seed just came to an absolute stop in the Elkhorn, bet down to the 2-1 favorite. Keep in mind, that was 2-1 against some legitimate company. Channel Cat came back and won the Man Award, which was a grade 1. We'll see him in the Manhattan on Saturday. Say the Word, I think, is a really, really talented racehorse, especially at those longer distances. So he's one that I would expect to be relatively close, but then also he's a little cheap on paper. But I mean, couldn't you make a case with a rider like Luis Saez aboard that Strong Tide, maybe he can't win the race, but if you're going to be aggressive, you're going to be forwardly placed in a spot like this, maybe you stick around to get a piece at something close to that 10-1. Again, I admittedly haven't done a deep dive and I don't know a great deal about Joseph O'Brien's horse, but I can't help but notice it doesn't look like there's a ton of speed. Maybe a horse like Strong Tide at a big number can stick around to finish, third or fourth if you're playing a try or a super.
That's an interesting idea. We talked about how tactics come into play at the Belmont. Tactics come into play riding a 2-mile turf race. So if you can conjure a case for one that you feel like could have a potential tactical advantage, who's also going to be a price, I'm not going to stand in your way. The third leg is the grade 1 Manhattan. This is a race for me where I really believe that Turf Classic is the key form line. I think domestic spending is supposed to improve. That was his first race back off a break. He ran so well. For me, he was against the flow there. JK thinks he may be against the flow a little bit again here. He went Colonel Liam over domestic spending. I had it the other way around, domestic spending and Colonel Liam, but I'm good with 80%, 85% of my money running through them. I may have a little bit of Gufo, who I think maybe will have a little bit more punch, cutting back a little bit in this spot, but I'm mostly 4-10, 10-4. How do you see it?
Yeah, I mean, of the two, I prefer domestic spending, but I mean, we're splitting hairs between the two of them, and I agree with you. It could be an absolute replica of the Turf Classic with those two throwing it down the lane. I have to throw a horse out there that I'm curious your thoughts. If I told you, and I also am under the impression that apparently he's not 100% to go in this race. If I had told you going into a grade 1 in New York at 1.25 miles, a Chad Brown trainee who has a little bit of tactical ability, a little bit of handiness, owns the highest last out buyer in the field, and you might get 10-1 on him. Well, I mean, that doesn't sound like it make any sense. I don't know what you want to do with Tribhuvan if he goes here. I know he's cross-entered at a race at Monmouth. I don't know. I thought he really ran well in the Fort Marcy, and that 105 buyer, I really don't think it's so totally out of left field. Maybe you want to say he's not going to work out that trip going right to the front, but I don't think he needs to go right to the front. And the thing that is probably the piece that I keep going back to that is convincing me that if he does go here, I want to bet him. The reporting can be a little bit spotty as far as gelding and things like that, but he was reported as a new gelding at the end of January. And we've seen throughout the years, horses, when they're gelded, they can dramatically improve for one reason or another. And I would feel like a total heel if on Saturday afternoon, if this horse does go in this spot, whether he goes to the front or he sits just off, if he paid $20 for Chad Brown and he won a grade 1 at a distance, I don't think it's a problem. And he was the fastest horse coming into the race from a buyer standpoint. If he goes, I'm gonna bet and pick Tribhuvan. I know it sounds silly. Maybe he's just a pacemaker for everyone else. I'm willing to acknowledge that. But from a gambling standpoint, I can't get past the idea of him being, on paper, just a ridiculous overlay.
You make an interesting case. We're going to come back to that and talk about it more. I want to talk at least briefly about this maiden claiming affair at Gulfstream Park. In the betting market, it appears that to be all about twice too many for Eddie Plisa. I was thinking, though, that call someone who cares. Now, granted, the layoff is a factor here, but before I saw the betting markets, I would have put the 5 and the 1 probably closer than they are in the betting market, with the 1 being 4-5 and the 5 being 3-1. I'm leaning on the 5, call someone who cares in this spot. What did you think, Matt, in this upcoming race at Gulfstream Park?
Yeah, the 5 was the first thought, and you kind of have laid out the case for at a little bit of a more interesting price. What about the 6 Magic Eclipse? You tried the turf last out, didn't work. Draw a line through it. The run 2 starts back. First off, a little bit of a layoff. Relatively close to a fast pace, moved into the fastest part of the pace, and then just flattened out down the lane. I wonder if getting back to the main track helps this one's cause. Will be or should be relatively close to the front, I would think. And you're looking at a $20 horse right now. So if I'm just shopping around for prices, I did think about the 5. don't love 5-2. I think the price on the 6 is much more appetizing.
Yeah, that's a good call. And with the one making the market for everybody else at 4-5, you're playing around with a 5-6 exacta. I might bet the 5 to win and have a little 5-6, 6-5 in the exacta in this spot. But those are great angles back in just 6 days off the turf effort, and then that sort of buried race to back off the move into the fast pace. That's a smart way of looking at the world, and you're getting 9-1. So yeah, I mean, it can almost double win bet those two.
And I hate to go back to the Manhattan. Like, what am I missing here other than he's sort of the outside Chad horse? I mean, is he really that bad? Like, be honest with me. Am I just missing it entirely?
No, I mean, for me, it came down to class, and I just wasn't sure how that. Let's look at how the form of that Fort Marcy's working out. That might, maybe I'll turn around to this. I mean, you make a great point about the gelding and how that could potentially make him a new horse. But in my quick look at it, I thought he might be found wanting for class, and I didn't think he'd be able to finish with the. I didn't think he'd be able to finish with the likes of those proper Grade 1 winners. But I mean, you're making a healthy case. You're making a very healthy case for a long shot who could enjoy a pace advantage. I was thinking there'd be more speed up top, but. I mean, on figures, the horse is not far behind.
Well, and I think that's the thing for me that stuck out the most was, especially from a Time Form US standpoint, his run last year, about a year ago in early July, that number is pretty much on par with what everyone else has done. So, yeah, the buyer looks like it came out of nowhere, that 105, but I could make a case that his buyers were too light last year, and he actually is closer to this 100. Go and get the one horse, number 6.
Yeah, come on with this horse.
Go and get him.
Favorite's got to be tired.
The one wants to lay down.
Yeah, well, let's see. We just have to put our head in front here before the wire comes.
You got him.
There it is. Another
Beauty.
10-1 winner on this show from Matt Bernier, and there have been several of them. Great work. I'm glad we remembered to look at that race. Yeah, I did lazily throw in a little double win bet in the end. I'm not
good stuff.
With everything else I did. I'm not doing much more than getting my money back. But I'll tell you, I can now. I'm now back. I'm basically back to even. I no longer have to pay for Pat Cummings' super expensive Negroni. It's just like a regular. We're back to a regular Negroni.
Even is never a bad thing.
Colonel Liam has given me a swirly, stuffed me in a locker, and taken my girlfriend so many times. You missed. Fan of horse, you kicked sand in my face. Kicked sand in my face, but you got the rest of them. He's such a good horse, Colonel Liam, and I've been on the bandwagon, and I mean I've been on the bandwagon. And it could keep going. I mean, again, I feel like domestic spending is supposed to improve past him, and that he was probably the horse of the winter spring on the turf when Chad Brown was lying in wait with his horses at the farm, wrapped in bubble wrap or whatever it was. And now I feel like that he's supposed to assert his superiority with some of these runners, but I'm not sleeping on Colonel Liam, and I wouldn't blame anybody who wants to follow Matt Bernier in too on his clever idea. Now, if Drew Hooven doesn't go here, does that help Colonel Liam a lot in terms of maybe being able to be closer, like more kind of dominate on the front end? Part of my thinking domestic spending over Colonel Liam, and again, I'm splitting hairs, but part of that was thinking that there would be a decent amount of pace. So I wish we knew if he was going or not. It would really help.
Well, I think Colonel Liam's the kind of horse that it feels like he can adapt to whatever's thrown his way. If they're really going to go early on, he can settle sort of mid-pack, 3 or 4 off of it and come with his run. Or if they're walking out there, I don't think they're going to be afraid to put him either maybe not outright on the lead, but pushing it, maybe a length or a length and a half off of it. Frankly, I don't know that I view him any differently, no matter who is in this race. I feel like he is that sort of horse that's very handy. If it were a confirmed one-run closer, perhaps like a domestic spending, maybe I'd be a little bit more leery. But at the same time, domestic spending to me has that classic profile of just, it doesn't matter what the deal is. The horse has got a wicked kick. and he's going to show up no matter what. And I have a feeling he is sort of Chad's, not to discredit any of the other ones that are in here, but I think domestic spending is Chad's, next number one. He's his next bricks and mortar. He's his next, you name all the horses that he's had throughout the years, fillies or colts. But, the Tribhuvan thing, I don't think he's going to make the front if he does go in this spot, unless he is in it just simply to ensure that the pace is on the fast side. I think Channel Cat has to go. I don't know that his speed plays nearly as well at 1.25 miles as it does at 1 3/8 or 1.5 miles. I kind of envisioned a trip where Tribhuvan sits just off, and you try to warm things up as you're around the far turn. And look, you'll find out that class answer real quick, because say what you will about Channel Cat, he's a pretty tough nut to crack. He goes out there and he'll run his race. Maybe he's not of the cream of the crop, but it's not like he's just some ham and egger and he's just going to kind of lay down for you. I wish I knew now. Apparently, it sounds like he's 80% Tribhuvan to run in New York on Saturday as opposed to go down to Jersey. But, in all likelihood, we're talking about domestic spending and Colonel Liam getting the job done, or 1-2, some fashion like that.
The $2 pick 4 closes out with the Belmont Stakes. Just for the record, we talked it through, but for the record, my numbers, I'm chalky. I'm 2, I'm 6, I'm 3. And I feel pretty good about that position in the race. Vertically, I think, bottom up tries and supers, I think Overtook as a horse you can take a long look at. It makes an absolute ton of sense to me to maybe be able to run third or fourth, but I feel like the three numbers, the three horses who look to me to be the fastest are Essential Quality and Known Agenda and Rombauer, and there's reasons to believe that all of them are going to go pretty well here. For folks who may have just joined us, Matt, if you want to give a quick recap of your thoughts, and then we should move on really quickly to this Belmont race.
Yeah, I've just separated the field into the 5 contenders and the 3 sort of also rans of the underneath types. If any of those 3 do something crazy, then I'll lose everything. But it is what it is. I went 6, 2, 7, 3. I prefer Known Agenda on top. Essential Quality, I'm not against him by any stretch of the imagination. I just think he might be a little bit of an underlay in the race. Rock Your World, I think if anyone wins for fun, I think it could be him. And Rombauer and Hot Rod Charlie to me are very similar for different reasons. Rombauer, if he runs the Preakness back, yeah, he absolutely has a chance. I'd be lying if I said there wasn't a part of me that wanted to see it again. As much as I've liked the horse throughout his career, that number was far and away the fastest he's ever run. Can you do it again on 3 weeks' notice against a better field going 1.5 miles? It's a lot of unknowns or questions for me to settle on a short price. And as far as Hot Rod Charlie is concerned, he's the only one in here that I feel like the trips, maybe outside of the Bob Lewis, have just more or less been ideal for him, I thought. And I know he had a little bit of traffic in the Derby, but it's little. I thought for the most part he was down on the inside. I thought everything worked really well, and he had every chance to win, and he couldn't get it done. You compare the trip between Hot Rod Charlie and Essential Quality, I think it's a no contest. It's Essential Quality that gets the nod every day of the week. So maybe Hot Rod Charlie's tactics are going to be the thing that moves him on, but I'm against him.
It makes sense, and I'm totally following your logic. I'm with the favorite here at Belmont. Very boring. What did you think, Matt? Did you have anything clever to oppose this one?
No, I'm very curious to see what we get from Following C for obvious reasons. We'll see what happens with a new barn. The horse looked really, really good down at Oaklawn Park. I would assume if you get a big effort from him here, you're on to some sort of a stakes race at Saratoga. Maybe it's the Amsterdam. Maybe it's something along those lines. But very curious to see what we get there. And reinvestment risk. I don't know what I think of the horse. I didn't really love him last year. I thought he was second by default behind Jackie's Warrior, in my opinion, in a couple of those races. And I know Midnight Bourbon was in that Champagne, but I don't really know what I think of the horse, to be honest with you, just yet.
Well, we're going to learn a little bit more here, that's for sure. It's a good point about Following C. This is the first one that I've noticed of the spendthrift runners that were taken from Baffert and given to Pletcher. I will say this is another thing that might sound flaky, but I swear it's true. Sometimes when you see a barn move like that, something like en masse like that, whatever happens with the first one, like if they overperform, let me rephrase. If they overperform or underperform, like seemingly significantly, it can happen with a whole bunch of horses making the same type of move. Just something to keep an eye on here with, what do you think now? Holding a slight advantage, though. It appears like Following C has plenty in second, and Reinvestment Risk, who got bet down late, being ridden a bit to keep up, it looks like to me. Meanwhile, Following C just started moving hands now, but basically got to the top of the lane with something approximating a double handful, and now looks to be in the process of being pushed out for the victory, unless something very surprising happens.
Now it's early in the day. We've only had one other dirt race thus far. I mean, that half mile was legit 3/4 in 8 and 4. Either this racetrack is really, really fast, or this racehorse is really, really fast. Because
I mean, look at how he finished up too. I mean, that was very nice.
Yeah, I mean, and it can honestly, probably somewhere in between, where the track's probably a little bit on the quick side, and this horse is legitimate. It's easy to sit here and just sort of speculate, but you take a look at that fig that he earned down at Oaklawn. I got to assume we're somewhere around 100 here this afternoon. Maybe it's even faster than that, but you will see him in a graded stakes race in his next start. I will guarantee that.
No doubt about it. Very, very impressive. We'll see how it comes out with the figure makers. This is so funny. JK is calling me. He knows He knows I'm doing the show. I'll tell him to pop in the live stream.
Put him on speaker.
Yeah, let's put JK on speaker. That's a great idea. I gotta tell him he's on air right away before he curses. I'm on air. HorsePlayer Happy Hour. Say hi to everybody. They can hear you.
Oh, hi everybody.
Is this do you need me to take a 5-minute break and call you? Is it an emergency, or should I go on with the show? Okay, we'll talk later. Hop on the live stream if you have a minute. He hung up on me. He just forgot. He forgot what time it was. I think, from knowing his tone as well as I do, I think it might have been a bad beat story. That's my guess. That's my guess.
Okay. Well, hopefully it's not too bad, and we've still got some stuff to play with over the next few days.
Oh, that's too funny. Oh, no doubt about it. He's locked. He's locked and loaded. All right. So when this goes official, we can look at our leaderboard. We just have one more race in our contest today. So if you've got any more Belmont Stakes Day questions, we'd love to hear from you. In fact, while we wait, we can run through some of these. Jeff wants to know about the odds of hitting the supers in the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown. Very long odds, I would say. That's not an easy thing to do. But congrats to you, Jeff. You've hit both. That's good.
Wow.
You've got to tell us your superfecta numbers this time around.
Yeah, right.
Let's see. Okay, we did that one. We got some betting market updates from Steve. I appreciate those. Some fixed odds action going on in the UK. A little bit of money for Zayad, a little bit of money for Strong Tide, a little bit of money for Mean Mary. That's interesting. Oh, Cheryl has a message I think we can all appreciate. Love the Breeders' Cup, as do we. So happy to be partnering with them on these shows. And let's see, who else we got here? Gary was asking about if the track will dry out. Will the turf come up soft? Unknowable. I mean, I would think the way that the forecast looked, I would think we'll be fast on the dirt, and I think we'll have a little give in the turf by Saturday. But for Friday and that big New York, like, who knows? I mean, I think you got to start thinking cut in the ground. Looking at the 2 key, for me, Euros in the sequence on Friday, it just makes me like them more, honestly.
Yeah, and I think that's always something that you factor in. For the most part, the Europeans, they handle a little bit of cut a little bit better, and the ones that don't typically come over here for good because they need a little bit firmer going. So, obviously you want to keep an eye on that and factor that into some of the horses, especially turf runners, who have done better with a little bit of cut in the ground. But to your point, I would like to think, I think the temp is supposed to be up and around that 80-degree area on Saturday. So as long as it doesn't just drop in buckets, hopefully we're going to be fast and firm, or at least maybe there's a little bit of give in the turf on Saturday. But for the most part, I think we should be okay.
Here is our new leaderboard with 1 left to play. Joe Solito in first place with 74.50, but all to play for as you roll down and see how close this is. And of course, as we've said before, first and second, that gets you into our finals. Top 10, that gets you tour points. And then top 17 advances you to play on Friday. So I'll run them all down. David Browning, that's significant. David Browning, who's already leading in the Tour, looking to put a bit of a stranglehold on things. And a top finish will do that. The way the Tour points works, for those wondering, you get 100 for first, down to 10 for 10th. So yeah, Craig, if you pop that back up, I'll run down the names real quick. If you're there right now. If you're not, don't worry about it. We'll come and get it, and we'll do the full rundown when it's all said and done. But feel free in the comments to pop in anything else you want to know from us or your thoughts. Lon asked about who we like in the Belmont Stakes. We've already talked about it twice, but here's the good news. We are going to archive this on the YouTube channel. So go ahead and check it out there. Short answer, our top 2 picks are the same in reverse order. Essential Quality and Known Agenda, but we talked about it much more extensively than that. If you want to go back and check, we've got a lazy dog chiming in. We appreciate that. I've got one. I'm almost tempted to tilt the camera down to show you Muggs. She had an adventurous HorsePlayers Happy Hour. Muggs did today, nearly knocking down the camera and the light fixture, but she managed to amble around. It is now she's like right here. It's pretty funny to hear from Lazy Dog in that situation. I'll see what else we got. Got a question about the Epsom Darby. I haven't looked yet, to be honest with you, but I'll tell you this: go to attheraces.com. They're a great content partner of the Breeders' Cup. Loads of amazing international racing information on there. They've got this wacky guy in a hat who covers the American Racing Forum. You might want to ignore him, but plenty of good stuff on there, and no doubt great coverage for Epsom. Everything you'll read on there is good. I feel like I'm picking. I hate to play favorites, but I will just say Americans in particular, I think will really enjoy the work of Simon Rowlands, who to my mind looks at things in kind of like a more American sectional timing mindset. And my good friend Kevin Blake over there, read anything Kevin Blake writes about racing. He's a star and always fantastic. And check out the Nick Luck Daily podcast. Speaking of Breeders' Cup, and Nick so involved with the Breeders' Cup broadcast and cocktails and conversation. And then with us, he does over on inthemoneypodcast.com, the Nick Luck Daily podcast, which is just a phenomenal way to keep up with all the key stories in racing, mostly in the UK and Ireland, but really around the world as well. I'm sure you're a regular listener to his fine work, Matt, and I know you know Nick pretty well from all your time working together.
Very much so. I mean, I think I don't think I'm saying anything groundbreaking. That he's probably as good as it gets, if not better than anyone else, as far as broadcasting in horse racing in the entire world. Obviously he does a lot of work over here, but he does just as much back home over in the UK, and he's equally as good a guy. So he's one of my favorite people.
Just don't tell him we said that. We don't need to inflate his ego any more than it already is. But no, in all seriousness, he is the man. Let's see. We got one more race from Gulfstream to talk about. Let's talk hockey for a second, because we have a nice little break here, and we'll wait for folks to guide us in the other conversations. I nearly broke out my Islanders jersey to troll you today.
You should have.
What? First, let's start there. What do you think? What do you think of our series, and then tell me what you think of the rest of it.
Well, it feels like the second period of that last game, Boston just took off for whatever reason, and obviously put them behind the 8 ball, down 3-1 going into the third, and for them to rally back the way that they did, I feel like they had a couple of those moments in the Capitals series in the first round as well, and to me, that's the sign that they have that kind of championship medal. The problem is, now you split at home and you go down to Nassau Coliseum that looks like a rock concert every time that the Islanders play at home, knowing that this is the last hurrah before they move to Belmont Park next year. So in my heart of hearts, I still believe Boston is the better team. I think talent-wise, they're better. I do think Ilya Sorokin has played fantastic. Tukov has a little bit of a hiccup, apparently. I mean, he hurt his back earlier in the season. He missed about a month and a half. And there are little whispers that it's kind of bothering him again. I don't know to what extent. I think Boston should get through, but my goal right now is, as a Bruins fan, I feel like if they can split down there on Long Island, come back to Boston for Game 5, tied 2-2, I think mission accomplished. You try to just hold serve on home ice and get the job done. Having said that, I didn't write about the game for NBC Sports Edge today simply because I was stunned that the Islanders were actually plus odds at home on the money line. I believe they were plus 105 or plus 110, which to me, it's kind of a coin flip right now. I still believe in Boston, but I wasn't bold enough to take the Islanders at home, where I mean, it's been a house of horrors for road teams this year.
It's gonna be fun to watch. Obviously, I grew up minutes from the Coliseum, and I'm a big I'm not that into hockey these days. Horse racing takes up nearly all of my sports bandwidth. But I still love them, and it's hard for me not to get all the feels watching the crappy old barn where I've seen sing like Bruce Springsteen in the '80s and whatnot, and getting to enjoy vicariously, and part of me feeling like I really should. If I had a different kind of life, and it wasn't Belmont week, I should be there. It's going to be fun to watch. I mean, I think if you made me gamble, I think the Bruins class and potential superiority will probably tell. But I think as a fan, they go there with a big shot. Obviously, it's just the randomness of sports, and they're a good team who's back in form. Which is just nice. It's nice to see them have won a playoff series and be in a decent place. We've heard from John. Let's see what his analysis is. Yeah, the longer you let the Islanders hang around, the more confident they get. Well, that's that is often true, and you see it in horse racing too, where the quote unquote superior team, if they don't put the other team away, it becomes the expression you use, Matt, much more of a coin flip. And we'll see what happens as far as that goes. Here's a racing question for you. If you had just one race of this weekend that you're the most looking forward to.
I mean, it's probably, and it's unfortunate because it sounds like we have a scratch of Valiance where she's not going to go in the Ogden Phipps because I believe she spiked the temperature. But I thought the Ogden Phipps was a fantastic race top to bottom that you could make a case for, before Valiance was withdrawn for at least 50% of the field. And I think, again, from a tactical standpoint, there are so many things that play into that race: tactics, class, and kind of the elephant in the room to me is it's a one-turn mile and a 16th. I don't know who's actually going to appreciate that compared to some of the other ones. I have this nagging feeling that a horse like Bonnie South is going to love Belmont Park. And I don't love her. I don't think she's a superstar, but I feel like she is that kind of horse where if it turns into just an all-out stamina test, I think she has as good a chance as anyone. Swiss Skydiver is in a little bit of a pickle, in my opinion. I think you got to go if you're Jose Ortiz. She can't continue to get this trip where she's in the pocket. Yes, it looks all well and good, but she just doesn't end up with the cleanest of runs. If you just send out of there and break running, I think that's her best opportunity to win. The problem is then you have Latruska, then you have She Dares the Devil, and you're probably setting it up for a horse like Bonnie South. So I think it's a fascinating race. Again, it's a shame that Valiance is gone because I think she had a big chance in there as well, to the point where I almost may have ended up picking her. Loyalty is probably going to make me pick She Dares the Devil, but I don't know that I think she's any kind of a slam dunk in this race.
It's an incredible race. I was thinking, and maybe it's harder than I'm making it out to be, but just looking at pace figures, I don't think it'll be hard for Swiss Skydiver to maneuver into an outside stalking third type of a trip in here. Because if they were all like kind of equally fast and there was a chance of her getting jammed up down in there, I'd be more scared of the scenario you described. I just think looking at sectionals, Latruska and She Dares the Devil are just, I think you're going to blink and they're going to be 2 lengths ahead. At least that's what I hope happens, because I think you're right. I think if she ends up gunning down there, you're looking at a meltdown. And man, Valiance would have definitely been the one I wanted for a meltdown. And it does make me think with Valiance out and that meltdown scenario absolutely possible. That does make me think that Bonnie South should be on at least a ticket or two. But I was team Swiss Skydiver for this one, thinking it would trip out for her. We'll see what happens out there in the Ogden Phipps about 3:20 p.m. on Saturday afternoon. Certainly one of the marquee matchups and just a super exciting race. I think you picked a pretty darn good one there, Matt.
I'm going to be really curious too to see, Latruska, all of her big races have come outright on the lead, but it felt in a weird way in that Apple Blossom that I don't want to say that they were going to be content if Swiss Skydiver went on with it, but it's not as though she was out there just winging it on the front end. And if I know Florent Giroux and I know everybody involved with She Dares the Devil, although I think she is just as capable sitting just off, I think they're going to break running. I think they're going to go. And at that point, I think Irad's going to need to make a decision. And that's why I brought up Jose with Swiss Skydiver, in that, to your point, maybe those other fillies are just fast enough where, fine, let them go. I'll be able to ease out into the clear 3-4 path and take my chances from there. But if for whatever reason they allow She Dares the Devil to clear off, or, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think She Dares the Devil has the ability to adapt, but at the same time, Latruska, I think she has one way to go. The problem is I don't know if she's naturally that kind of horse. I don't know if she can go out there and drop 45 and 4 and clear to the front with She Dares the Devil, because I think she is equally as fast. One other thing I'd throw out there, I've never said it aloud on anything. She Dares the Devil, the Monomoy girl piece is kind of hanging out there in that, they're going to put her away for a little bit, but the idea, I would assume, is going to be the distaff again. When I watch She Dares the Devil run on dirt, I think of a turf horse. And if you go back and watch that La Troyenne, the way that she finished, she actually had a late kick, and you don't see that on dirt. And I don't know. I've never heard anything. This is just purely speculation. I wonder if at some point they try the grass with her.
It's an interesting notion for sure. You've been so in tune with her whole career too. It wouldn't surprise me. A couple more comments before we get to our last race. Tom hoping that Bonnie South is going to be able to get the job done in the Phipps. Fan of horses back with the Montreal Canadiens love there. Hoping for more from the resurgent Habs. You give them a shot?
Yeah, I'm certainly against the Jets. I mean, the Jets are very average. And the other thing too that happened last night, I'm sure most people have seen it. Just the ridiculous hit at the end of the game that Scheifele put on. His name is slipping my mind from Montreal, but I feel like that's the sort of thing that's going to bring a team together even more. I don't think Montreal is going to do anything in the Final Four, but I think they're going to get out of Canada. I think they're going to make the Final Four.
Matt Miller chimes in with a pair, thanking us for doing the show. Well, thank you, Matt. We do all these shows because they're incredibly fun to do, and interacting with the listeners is a huge part of that. He's asking, listen to this. He's asking about my training plans, if I'm going to be back to do another marathon in the fall. No, and there aren't any Clocker reports. I'm in reduce the size of my being a human mode. I realized so I did the marathon last year at a weight kind of too heavy to do a marathon after doing it, I believe. And I came away with it. It was an awesome experience, like half walk, half run. But I came away from it saying the next one I want to do, I want to run. And I know I'm not going to be able to do that unless so I probably already lost 10 to 15, and I probably need to lose another 20. So I'm in weight loss mode. I've been hopping on Susan's Peloton. I've been walking. I joined a pool in Saratoga for the summer. I'm going to do all these no impact things. And so I don't know if I'll be quite ready. It's one of these, I'm not unlike Monomoy Girl. We'll see if I'm ready for the big test in the fall, but spending some time on the farm and trying to get fit. Let's talk about this Gulfstream Park race, my friend, that closes this contest. We move on here to race number 8. Tote Board has an extremely open look, that's for sure, with a whole slew of runners under 6-1, with the one right now being your 2-1 favorite. If you're watching out there and you have a strong opinion in this race, let us know what you think. Did you have a strong opinion in this race, Matt? What did you anything clever?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think French Reef is the controlling speed from the rail. You try to clear and just take them as far as you can. Won't argue with anyone that likes that horse. I have somehow found myself almost every time he runs on the number 8, the one that's on the screen right now, Legendary Prince. I think he's actually a pretty good little turf sprinter. He's not a stakes type, but he's that kind of horse that it feels like more often than not, he shows up and gives you what he's got, especially on the grass. You can excuse the races preceding layoff lines. Things went a little bit sideways on him. That Claiming Crown Canterbury, that was a really nice field, considering you had a number, obviously the Claiming Crown. These are horses that ran for a tag at one point over the year prior, but with Faya in there and fully loaded, those are legitimately talented racehorses. I think Legendary Prince is pretty good. He just needs a little help up front to come with his run. But just strictly from a price standpoint, I would rather the 7-2 than the 2-1 on the 8 compared to the 1.
Makes sense. I was taking a look at Romario in this spot, facing an easier group than last time. Had a little bit of trouble at the start, got a little bit stuck against the flow, has some decent late kick and, enough tactical speed, hopefully, to stay in touch. I thought 9-2 looked fair on that runner, who I would describe as one of the ones in this wide open race. Not my strongest opinion of the day by any means, but something to have a little action here in our last race.
Speaking of turf sprints, my affinity for them, that they're my favorite. They're my bread and butter. Saturday, the Jaipur, there's no speed whatsoever.
It's crazy.
Do you still factor that in, or do you still look at it and say, I can't get past a horse like Gregorian Chant, who he doesn't have any speed. He's coming in from California, but in his entire career, even when he was still over in Europe, every time he sprinted, he's won. And I thought he ran down a really nice horse in Bombard last time out. Bombard came back and won next out with the 97 buyer. But let's just say you're in my position. I don't know who you do or don't like. Is the lack of pace such a concern that it would get you off a horse like Gregorian Chant? He's 10 on the line. I don't know if he's going to be 10. He might be shorter than that. But, is there enough of a concern that it's going to be so slow that he won't have a chance?
Here's how I'll hedge my bet in answering that question. It depends on what exactly we're talking about. Would I build my day around Gregorian Chant? Would I make him a prime play? No, I don't think I could, because I think he's just such a late runner, and he's going to need something really unexpected to happen to get that kind of setup. At the same time, at the price this horse is going to be, if you just wanted to throw some win money, or if you wanted to come up with a horse to include in some sort of horizontal or vertical plays, the price is going to be too big to totally get off. So that's how I hem and haw my answer. I think it could end up being very straightforward. I feel like Bound for Nowhere is the fastest horse in the race with the most class, who could end up being ridden aggressively and have a pace advantage. So I was planning on pressing up Bound for Nowhere for a lot of my action, and then maybe trying to come up with a few clever alternatives. Steuben's a horse who I feel like is a little bit better than the bare form suggests, because of trip reasons in the last couple. Casa Creed, another horse I thought was a little bit interesting, closing well. Basically, what Casa Creed did the last day is probably what Casa Creed has to do again today, quicken off a slow pace. So I just like the fact that he had that club in his bag, if you would. Those were the two alternatives I saw to Bound for Nowhere. But, I take your point. With what Gregorian Chant has accomplished, and as well as he's finished up his races, 10-1 does feel a little too big.
Let me rephrase that. Would you downgrade him from an A to a B? This is the first leg of the $1 pick 6 on Saturday. Would it be such a concern that you would downgrade him?
Yeah, I think I'd have to. Okay. If you were just showing me the horse on form and asking me what do I think of him in the Jaipur, if you just looked at his paper, you'd be like, this is a main contender. And then I look at him in the context of the pace in the situation, and I say, this horse can win, and he might be a great price, but he's probably going to be up against it.
That's fair. Yep. And again, look, you and JK know a hell of a lot more than I do about turf sprints, so that's why I'm asking.
Meanwhile, French Reef, has he put the sword to this field? Is it all over but the shouting? It sure looks that way. 6-5 runs out, a pretty easy winner. My Romario will come in to complete the exacta. Anyway, I didn't bet. I got too busy talking. I didn't make any bets on the race. That would have been a logical thing to do. Who knows? Maybe those place points for Romario could make a little bit of a difference, or it could be, sometimes you see this with the big chalk in the last race, very little change in the leaderboard. When this goes official, Craig, I'll pop this up here. If you have another question for us, you've got you're running out of time. So pop them in there. Stuart says good luck with the running. Oh, going for a jog. I like it. There you go. I tend to agree that the Joseph O'Brien runner in the 2-miler looks very live. Price, the only potential concern. I didn't think to look what this horse is with the bookies right now. To me, if you could lock in, Stewart's talking about him like bet of the weekend. three. If the horse is 3-1, 11-4, yeah, I could be easily convinced as to that. Looks like more of a 2-1, 9-5 type shot. I think David made him 8-5 on the morning line. We'll see how that goes. Stuart sent another message just thanking us for the show. We thank you for tuning in. We remind folks to set their calendars for next week. Tell your friends. Let's get as many people involved in this as we can. This is a great chance for us to really be a community and fully interact with the audience. If you know people who like horse racing, who are into that and doing it in a positive way, as opposed to hey, there's some fun things, there's some nice things that happen on horse racing Twitter, but it can be a little aggressive. And that's not what we're about here. It's not what we're about at all in the Money Media family. So, this is a nice place we can hang out and just talk sports and racing and have a little fun along the way.
As far as, and the other beautiful thing about next week, especially, we're going to have plenty of racing to rehash from this past week, or the weekend that was at that point. Speaking of, and the last one that I'll continue to pick your brain about, have you done the work on the Brooklyn?
I have.
Do you have a lean in there?
Yeah, let me pull up I wrote some notes on it, and my brain is mush enough that I want to pull up my notes. I think I know who I picked, but let's make sure.
Initially, I was really interested going back and watching the tape of that marathon down at Churchill in Rise the Guy. I thought he made a little bit of a premature move off the layoff, and you would get a forward move. The price will be right. And then I went and watched Tism Magician's run in the Tokyo City, and I just said, boy, I think that's going to be really hard to beat.
Yeah, that's the one that I like. Looks really to have improved going long on the dirt, in the perfect hands for a spot like this, and should trip out, whether it's on the lead or sitting just off. I get the Rise the Guy case, and Matt Fagvolgi made that case on our In the Money podcast.com/plus show about it. My alternatives, I was looking at Moretti just as a tough tactical runner, and I thought that was a workout that just made me go, and wonder if this horse wasn't ready to fire a big one off the break. And yeah. I'm not going to rule out it's going to be a small, base wager type include, but Rocketry, I felt like has some form to go in the mix and might be the best closer. So that's where I was going to go, but mostly I was going to put half my money at least through Tism Magician in the spot. I think it's custom made for him this year.
That's just one of those races where he was always a horse that hinted at having, legitimate ability, but it felt like he just was maybe a notch below at those shorter distances. And I don't know if it was just as simple as you finally stretch him way out in distance. And I know those opportunities are few and far between, but I tell you what, he looked fantastic. And the form of that race is more or less held up. He was 9 clear of the runner-up who came back and earned a 92 in the All-American the other day on synthetic. So, I thought he was really, really spectacular out at Santa Anita last out, and we'll find out if he could transfer that form to Belmont Park.
Well, that's really the big question of the race. We had a question about Sweet By and By, who Howard in the comments mentions is out of the races this weekend.
Yes,
apparently tied up and will not be participating. That's disappointing for those fans and connections. I bet you, well, let's see. It says official on the TV. Does it say official over at horseplayers.com, though? Producer Craig, that's all that matters. I'm sure when it is, he'll pop it up there. And, we'll roll through our 17 winners on the day, and we'll get out of here. I've got Negronis to buy.
Yeah, we're not quite official yet on my screen anyway. Waiting for the final leg to go official. I was trying to see who, if anyone, was going to be affected by that result in the finale. The person who was in 10th had the runner-up, the horse that you liked, Romario. So maybe you'll move up a couple points, get some more points toward the playoff system. But the tough thing too, though, was the winner wasn't going to change things dramatically just because of the super short price.
That's exactly right. And we'll get all the details in a minute. Maybe a little tote delay here at Gulfstream. Of course, when you're in a hurry, you get the tote delay. Got a question coming in about Overtook, if he was entered so Repoli could have a horse in. I don't think so. I think the horse fits as like a wild long shot for underneath.
Yeah, he was, of those three that I consider kind of the outsiders, I could see him finishing 3rd or 4th if you're somebody that plays like a try or a super. If any of those three win the race, I said it earlier, I'll lose everything. I'm not going to just just not going to have them. They're
Agreed.
far too slow right now.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely agree. Let's see. Okay, so Euro Invaders. Somebody texted me this in the 2 mile Belmont Gold Cup. Last 4 races, 3 wins and a second. I'm told that's not bad, Matt Bernier.
Pretty good. Pretty good betting 75%. I mean, that's one of those things too where it feels like, okay, here we go, and we are final. But that's one of those, that is a specialty over there that we just don't do here.
Yeah.
So I think you automatically upgrade the Euros in general. But when you're going, I mean, you want to talk about a marathon. That's a marathon. We don't do that here.
All right, let's see how this ends up. Joe Solito, 80-50. Paul McClellan, 64-10. Welcome to the Exacta. Welcome to the finals at the end of the season. We didn't fully explain what the finals mean. You know what? We'll wait. We'll do that next time. But congrats to Joe and Paul for getting there. David Browning, big stuff. That's going to be 70 more points. 80 more points. Math. PTF tries math, fails. To his already league leading Triple H Tour total. Jeff Argentieri, 46.70 in 4th. John Lamson, 44.10. Buck Waller in 6th, 43.40. PJ Priskenis, another name to get more critical tour points, 43.20 there. Jose Giron, 41. Matt Miller, who we heard from in the comments just moments ago, at 40.70. Wayne Tam, our final point getter for the tour. But then we have 7 more names who will be competing on Saturday, and we'll follow their journeys as they try to get a $10,000 Breeders' Cup betting challenge seat, which you can compete for yourself right over there at horseplayers.com. Togo Travaglia, John Hiercheck, Eddie Kyle, Brian O'Keefe, Nancy Spence, Pete Dressens, and Bob Schreider. Good stuff. Oh, actually, wait a second. I forget how it works with no, it's not a tie. There's a tiebreaker, so Bob must get it, and Alex Mangobat, the unlucky bubble person today. That's how it goes.
I don't know how they're doing it because the tiebreaker usually boils down to shows, and none of them had any shows. So, I mean, this is genuinely a 3-way tie for 16th. 17 entries were going on. I have no idea how they're going to handle it, frankly.
It might be like who entered early. It gets pretty flaky. But I'm just saying flaky in a bad way. It's like you gotta do something at that point. Anyway, apologies for not knowing that answer. I'll get coached up on it before too long. Okay, that's going to do it for this edition of HorsePlayers Happy Hour. Matt Bernier, thank you so much. Great getting to spend time with you. Godspeed this weekend, my friend.
Thank you. You as well, bud.
And thanks to producer Craig. Thanks to all of our friends over at Breeders' Cup. Thanks to everybody out there for watching and following along. Please join us again. Check out everything we got going on over at InTheMoneyPodcast.com. It is a loaded lineup. We've got hours of Belmont coverage for you. Go over there, pick and choose. If that's not enough, InTheMoneyPodcast.com/plus for much more than that. I think that's it. We're going to see you next week. Happy Belmont Day. Happy Belmont weekend. May you win all your photos. I was late with the